All right, good evening, everyone. As you are fully aware, hopefully, this is the flag football preseason coaches webinar. And tonight we have Melissa Anger, our staff lead with flag football, one of our sports directors, Mike Sarnowski, our VP of sports, and myself, Steve Bennett, the senior director of competition for Special Mix Maryland. Um, so we'll go ahead and get started again. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. And what we'll do here is we'll go over the agenda real quick. So some of the basics of Zoom I'll cover right now, and basically those are pretty simple. If you should have a toolbar either at the left of your screen or the bottom of your screen, and if you see where it says participants, if you click on that, you will see a list of names, and that's where you can mute or unmute yourself, and also you can raise your hand if you have a question or something to make an addition to the group or make a comment. You will also see the yes, no. If we have any questions that come up, we may ask you to click yes or no, depending on the question. You will also see a chat. If you click on that, that's where you can message each other. You can comment on things or ask questions that way as well. And the other thing, again, thank you guys for joining us. Mike Sarnowski will go over the return to activities, requirements, and protocols. Then through that, right after that, he will turn it over to Melissa Anger to go over some sports-specific stuff for flag football. Then towards the end of this, we will have the typical resources that we go over every year. We're not going to go into depth on any of those. Most of you guys, I think all of you right now are returning coaches, so we'll just let you know they're on the slide deck. You need to reference those. They are available for you. Then at the end, we may have some open floor discussions, questions, etc. So again, with that, thanks for joining us tonight, and I will turn it over to Mike to start with the return to activity information.
Great, thank you, Steve, and thank everyone for joining us tonight. Yeah, this is some interesting times, and we're really happy that some programs are ready and able to restart, at least in some format, and wanted to go through the requirements that are necessary for any Special Olympics program to meet in order to return to activity. As we're going through here, there are some reactions we've had from some coaches are along the lines of great concern. And there certainly are some changes that are necessary when we're in phase 1 or phase 2 of the return to activity protocol. That said, we do also want to talk through what some options are and what some opportunities are in terms of addressing some of those issues as we go through. So we'll talk about some of that specifically in a few moments. But in general, one of the key messages here as you're going through and preparing to potentially return to activity is coordinate with your area leaders. Your area director has been engaged and involved for the last several months as these return to activity protocols have been put in place. In many cases, your area director may have been directly involved with that. And he or she can be a great resource and can also tap into other resources to help with that. The other, and we'll repeat this a couple times, what we are sharing here is required. These are not suggestions, these are not recommendations, these are requirements for any program that wants to start back up. And that said, not every program may be ready to, and that's okay. Again, work with your area director to decide if or when you are ready and able to start back up for this sport or other sports as we're going through. As I showed on this page here, you should have each received from Melissa this return to activities protocol packet. It's also available on our return to play virtual SOMD site that you can access. You can also link to that through the coach resource page as well, which you're all familiar with. That is the latest information and goes in much more depth. Hopefully you had the chance to skim through it. I strongly request that you do read it actually cover to cover. It has a lot of information and can explain things even in greater depth, although we'll do our best to answer your questions here. we're really just highlighting a number of the things that are here. But as we're talking through the different protocols and the different requirements, keep in mind that the old standbys or the old regulars of their medical, volunteer applications, volunteer screenings, they're still all required. They still apply at this time. There's just additional things due to the safety concerns and challenges that we're in. We'll look through at the different phases. Every program, when they start to return to activity, is going to start off in phase 1 and progress from there. And again, this is a changing process. We think things are, in terms of what the requirements are relatively stable at this point. Although there may be changes, there certainly will be clarifications as new questions come to light and such. So, we'll keep you updated as best we can. Again, your area director is the best person for additional information, although we will push information out as we can. There's a series of webinars around return to activity to help train athletes in preparation around these new protocols. 2 have already been held, and they should be viewed pretty much in sequence. Even though there is a bit of a summary from what our story so far, if you will, from the previous recordings, but it doesn't go over everything. So if you have athletes that would like to participate and would like to utilize this, and families, I say athletes, but families, anybody in your program, they can view these. There's the 2 that have already been held, and then there's another one that'll be held this coming Monday night at 6 o'clock. And again, the recording for that will be posted. As new recordings and such become available, they'll also again be available on that Return to Play website. All the things that we're going over here are things that have been given to us by Special Olympics International and apply nationwide, potentially, depending upon where they are, it could be worldwide. But and then we've adjusted or added stuff based on the requirements for Maryland and such. So we've got all that. It covers, it applies to all in-person activities, whether they include athletes or not. So it's not just your practices and trainings and competitions, any meetings that you have where people are meeting in person. So if you're having a meeting of your coaches, this all still applies. It doesn't get waived at that point until we're in phase 3, and also for fundraising events and such. Again, I said I'd repeat this. These are requirements, not recommendations. One note, as most of you I think are aware, we have a fairly robust high school unified sports, interscholastic sports program. When they return to school, and again, that's sort of up in the air when that all is going to start back up again in terms of in-person activity for interscholastic sports. But when that does happen, they'll be following not necessarily these requirements of this protocol, but they'll be following what their local school system is requiring. And that's expected. We point that out because there probably will be some differences between the 2. You may also have athletes who are in your community programs and also go to or in a high school IUS or interscholastic unified sports program. And so there may be some differences in terms of what they're experiencing there, and just be aware to clarify for them and help them through that process. And again, no one is required to return to activity or return to action right away. Work this through with your areas. I know some area directors have decided, or their area management teams have decided, they're not going to start anything right now. They may just wait until later into this fall season, or just wait until the winter season and reevaluate it at that point. And that's okay. We don't want to rush anybody. We don't want to make anybody feel that they have to move forward when they're not ready to do so. As I mentioned, there's a multi-phase process as we go through. Everyone, until before we start activity, everyone's in phase 0, as we've been in effectively since the middle of March. When you start out, you'll be starting out in phase 1. And there's some requirements there. Again, this is just a summary. But in phase 1, you can have groups of up to 10 participants participating as a group. Now, you could potentially have multiple groups of 10 as long as they are physically distant, and it's more than 6. I mean, literally distant. They're separate. They don't cross over. You're not mixing people back and forth. They are really distinct groups that just happen to be practicing at the same location. That's certainly okay as long as you maintain that difference or distance. And when we're talking about participants, we're talking about everybody who is there with that group. So athletes, unified partners, coaches, volunteers, potentially family members if they're down there at your training area. They all count towards that maximum of 10. In phase 1 and actually in phase 2 as well, you need to adhere to strict social distancing. Everyone needs to stay 6 feet apart. Also in phase 1, there's no direct or indirect contact permitted. Direct contact is when one person literally touches another person. So high five, pats on the back, that type of thing. In football, if you're trying to teach somebody how to throw a pass, actually, you may, in other situations, be holding their arm and moving them through a motion. That would not be permitted because that's direct contact in that situation, because they're actually touching the person's arm to move through. And again, if you're touching their uniform, that still counts as touching them. Indirect contact, which is also not permitted in phase 1, is when one person touches an object and then another person touches that object. So a coach picking up a football and handing it to an athlete involves indirect contact. That's only permitted, if you will, when you're disinfecting or cleaning the item between that. So if you pick it up, wipe down the football and hand it to the athlete, that would be okay, but not just handing it off. And again, you have to make some judgments as to when it becomes impractical and how we need to adapt to that. So it may be in football that the athletes are retrieving their own throws or some other situation, or you're cleaning the equipment between that. And again, no shared equipment without disinfecting. The other, and we'll go into this pre-event screening, but pre-event screening needs to take place in phase 1. In phase 2, most of the same restrictions are still in place from phase 1 with a couple exceptions. One is that instead of a maximum of 10 people per group, you can go up to 50 people per group. And again, that's still a plot that includes athletes, partners, coaches, volunteers, family members, anybody who's down there at your training area where you're doing your activity. Yeah, but your group can be up to 50. Still need the social distancing. You still cannot have direct contact, but indirect contact would be permitted when you're at phase 2. And then of course the pre-event screening would need to be taking place as well in phase 2. When we get to phase 3, then basically everything is lifted. It's going to be a while before we get to phase 3, just being candid here. While we certainly would expect folks to move from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 in a progression, and I should also say in phase 2, there can be sort of staggered tiers. If things are going really well, we could, for a given area, move from 50 up to 100 or 150 as the cap. But that's only if things are going exceedingly well. It's also possible if there's a problem, if there's a challenge, that you could have to recede back to phase 1 in a situation here. Hopefully that won't happen, but it is certainly possible. So again, that's at a very surface level what the 3 phases are, and there's much more detail available in that packet that that's been sent out to you. But just to kind of cement some stuff in and check things out, Steve, can you go ahead and launch the first poll? So here, what we'd like you to do, and you may have to stretch the bottom of the poll down a little bit if you don't see all the questions, is check off each of the different statements there that describe something that would be permitted while you're in phase 1, and check off all that apply. When you've done all reviewed and either checked or not checked each of the 7 statements, hit that submit button, and we'll see how we're doing there. Steve, we're probably looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 responses.
Yeah, I was looking at 5 or 6. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, the one that's just a phone number wouldn't be able to do the, they probably are only listening. They probably don't, they may not see or may not be able to click.
The phone number is Don Yeagle, so I think he was having trouble hearing us on the computer.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it's not an additional person. Yeah. And again, these polls are being brought to you by Mr. Steve Bennett. He's quite proud of his technical prowess that he's developed in doing polls. So.
Thank you for the shout out. And again, I think we've got a few people who've done it, but just make sure you do hit the submit button once you've completed the task. Thank you.
Just give another moment. Okay, looks like we got 5, Steve. So if you can go ahead and show the results. Okay. I need to stretch that out myself. Okay, yeah, so in phase 1, coach physically moving the athlete's arm. No, again, that's direct contact. So great, everybody got that right. The handing of the equipment to the athlete without cleaning it in between, that again would not be permitted. Demonstrating from a distance 8 feet, perfect, everyone got that right. Using the poly spots or markings on the ground, that's a great idea actually, in terms of giving the athletes. It's hard for anybody to really think of what's 6 feet and visualize that. That gives a nice visual marker for folks to make that difference. The throwing the football back and forth, the distance is great at 15 feet, but again, you're having indirect contact in phase 1, that's not permitted. So great, everyone got that right. Kicking at an open goal would be certainly permitted, but putting a goalie in there, whether it's an assistant coach, an athlete, whatever, would not be permitted because again, that would be then indirect contact. So great, everyone did really well on that. Steve, let's show the second poll that's tied to this. Okay, and here, going through, just put a check next to each of the people who would be included in the maximum allowed group size, whether it's at phase 1 where the cap is 10 or phase 2 where at least initially the cap is 50. So again, check off all the ones that would be counted towards them and then hit the submit button. Oh, and Nancy said it didn't choose the poly spots because it meant they couldn't move. That's a good point. Okay. And looking for one more. Sounds good. Okay. And perfect. All of the first 5 that are there, absolutely way to go. Family members staying in their car in the parking lot, no, they wouldn't count. That's great. And that actually, we advise you to do that, and quite frankly, don't let them leave in case there's an issue. And we'll talk more about the requirements that the athletes need to maintain or volunteers throughout. Family members who come down to the training space, if they're coming down to the training space where you're practicing, they would count towards that total. So it may be that you don't allow that. Again, and that's okay. However, if you have them, we say 50 meters away there, but a good distance away, pull out their lawn chair, sit there and watch, that certainly would be okay. So great, did real good with that. Thank you, Steve. Can get rid of that. Okay. So this next grid, which is cut or split across 2 different pages, is almost identical to a similar grid that's in the packet. There's just a couple tweaks that are on there, but this gives a nice little set of guidance, whatever phase you're in, of what are the standards to which you need to comply, what are some education things to keep in mind, and then we'll look at a couple others in just a moment. So again, the compliance is there and you can look across. On the educate, one of the key things I think to note is this section here of prior to attendance, advising folks on high risk conditions and who may be at a higher risk of serious complications and such. Strongly recommend that you do that via a meeting ahead of time. And as noted there, Zoom meetings, if you weren't aware, Zoom, you can get a free account and have meetings of up to 40 minutes and can go through a lot of this stuff. If for some reason you need a larger account, your area may have one already. Depending upon the timing, headquarters may be able to let you use one of our accounts or host that. In addition, Jeff, myself, others, I'm sorry, Jeff Abel. Jeff, as many of you know Jeff, he's our Vice President of Local Program Development, may be able to assist you with that as well and going over things with folks. So, but utilize the technology. We recognize when you're doing Zoom meetings or anything online, you may not be getting everybody. Not everybody necessarily has access to broadband or a device even to look at some stuff, let alone having access to Wi-Fi. But it is certainly something to take into consideration and to utilize that, and can help you a lot by getting that all reviewed in advance. But again, we're not going to read through the stuff here in this grid. The prepare section, again, goes through some things to do in preparation for your first practices, including, and you could do this actually in the context if you do an online meeting, of distributing what's called the acknowledgement of risk forms. There's a couple different terms that are used. We're going to see some videos where they call it, I think, COVID risk for participation or something like that. It's all the same thing. It's the acknowledgement of risk form. It's a form, we'll go through some of the details in a little bit, but it's a form that everyone, before they participate, must complete. So every athlete, every partner, every volunteer, every coach, every family member who's going to be with you, and isn't staying in their car or staying 40 or 50 meters away, all need to complete that. Again, highly recommending outdoor activities and so on down the line. And then the activity, just some reminders there in terms of some of your layout and some things to do. One of the other things that we strongly recommend when we say prepare, and this may make a little more sense when we look at the video shortly, of setting up your venue and different things with that. Even if you're using the same space, the same venue that you've used for years, it would probably be worthwhile making a special trip and looking at it from the perspective of, how am I going to lay stuff out so that I can do the screening and I can make sure that people are physically separated, and locating the screening near where folks are parking their cars, and so that there's some things. But basically looking at the space, you've probably never been there, looking at it from that perspective. And so doing that can be really helpful in preparation before you have your first practice. Perhaps even making that trip with one of your, or some of your other folks on your coaching staff or your volunteer staff that you have there to help you with that. Again, maintaining your 6-foot distance, because you still need to do that regardless of the situation while you're in phase 1 or phase 2. So that said, let's watch this little video, and you'll see probably some familiar faces as soon as the little button pops up. Come on. Come on. One more try. Okay, folks, I am going to temporarily make shift, sorry. When in doubt, let's get that nice and big. Hopefully. This was working just a little bit. This is actually the first time we haven't been able to get to work at all. Sorry, 1 minute. Okay, sorry. Apologize for this. Like I say, this is the first time this has happened in all the different videos, so, or all the different sessions here. I believe this is it. Yep.
In order to safely return to activity, Special Olympics recommends that participants wear a mask if on public transport, such as a bus, trolley, subway, or if carpooling with someone not living with them. If Special Olympics is providing transportation, face masks during travel and maintaining physical distance are required. Prior to entering any activity, practice, event, or gathering, all athletes, coaches, unified partners, volunteers, family members, and caregivers must participate in an on-site screening. It is important to take the necessary steps to create a safe on-site screening area. 1. Create a single point of entry. One entryway that allows participants to enter one at a time. Remember, we strongly advise outdoor spaces only in Phase 1. 2. Use chalk, tape, cones, or other markers to indicate what 6 feet or 2 meters looks like for physical distancing. 3. Make sure you have all the necessary supplies for a proper screening, which include temporal thermometer, pens, masks, gloves, disinfectant wipes or spray, hand sanitizer, COVID-19 participant code of conduct and risk assessment forms. Volunteers will fill out a monitoring form for each participant that passes through screening. The form includes the participant's name, contact info, temperature, answers to screening questions, and the outcome of the screening. For instance, can they participate or have they been isolated and sent home? Next, you will ask each participant the following required screening questions. We recommend using visual aids when asking the questions. 1. In the last 14 days, have you had contact with someone who has been sick with COVID-19? 2. Have you had a fever in the last week? Temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.8 degrees Celsius, or higher? 3. Do you have a cough and/or difficulty breathing? 4. Do you have any other signs or new symptoms of COVID-19? Fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, or diarrhea.
In the past 14 days, have you had contact with someone who has been sick with COVID?
Yes.
Yes, you have? Okay, so I'm gonna actually have you step down here.
If a participant answers yes to any questions, they must be isolated from the group, sent home, and instructed to contact their healthcare provider. Participants who are found to have COVID-19 symptoms must wait 7 days after symptoms resolve to return to activity, or must provide written proof of physician clearance to Special Olympics to return to activities. Participants who test positive or have COVID-19 must provide written medical clearance before returning to sport and fitness activities. After answering the screening questions, you will conduct on-site measurement of participants' temperatures using a thermometer, preferably a non-touch thermal scanning one if possible. If a thermometer is not available, you must ask participants to self-monitor and provide results of that monitoring. If there are any concerns about fever, temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.8 degrees Celsius, or higher, the participant should not be allowed to remain on site. If high, you may retest the participant after 5 minutes to ensure temperature is accurate. Record all names, results, and contact information using the template provided, and keep in case needed for contact tracing or reporting. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity protocol and safety guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Great. And let's see if we can get back to here. Okay. Sorry, I had to advance again to there. Okay. So again, just as a reminder or a review, these are the 4 questions. Again, they're all in your packet. They need to answer all of them as no. There is one caveat, however. When we're talking cough or difficulty breathing or any of the symptoms that are here, if they are known to be caused by a chronic condition that the person has, asthma, arthritis, allergies, I have a chronic sinus problem, so I'm always going to answer yes that I have congestion, that type of thing. That does not count against them, if you will, when they're doing the screening. It's only if it's a new symptom, if it's not something that they always have. Those of us of a certain age, I think, can probably always answer that one as well. Doesn't count against us, okay? And then only after they've answered all of those as no, again, with the caveat that we've got here, then they can go on and get the temperature check. So Steve, why don't we launch that 3rd and final poll for folks here. And okay, so again here, if you could just read through each of the different questions, and for those that are true, check off the box and then hit submit. looks like we got 5. Oh, that's right. We had another 1 or 2 folks join us, so that's great. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Yep, looks really good. So guys paying attention. Yeah, the first one, it's not at least 3. They need to answer all 4 with the caveat that I mentioned. Yes, again, if they have the 104 temperature or higher, wait 5 minutes. And the reason behind that, again, they could have just gotten overheated walking from the parking lot or whatever, give a little rest and let them cool down a bit and then recheck. Certainly athletes and partners need to be screened, but they are not the only ones. Again, it's everyone. And then the no-touch thermometer, yes. And again, strongly recommend, if you can, do the pre-screening near the parking area, if at all possible. It'll make things really be helpful, particularly if you have to turn someone away and all there. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, so going on. So I mentioned before, everyone when they start out is going to start out in phase 1, and then when you're ready, and then you'll be in phase 1 for at least 2 weeks. Then, and you need to be showing during that time that that your program is doing well in terms of following the protocol and got things worked out really well using that comply, educate, prepare activity grid, the thing that was split across 2 slides and is in your guide. Is there. Right now, the Special Olympics guidelines are somewhat more restrictive than the guidelines from the state government, state of Maryland government. It is feasible, I guess, at some point where that could reverse. Whichever is the most restrictive is what we need to follow. So I keep that in mind. The decision to move from one phase to the next is going to be made by your area leadership in conjunction with Special Olympics Maryland headquarters, typically with Jeff and his team, although depending upon how we divide our forces, it may be someone else, but it'll be made there, the area director being the key person there. And this can also vary by area. So you've got Harford County here. Harford may be in phase 2, but Howard may still be in phase 1. It's really dependent upon the experience and expertise that the individual area programs have developed for going through the process. Okay. If there's a failed screening.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a question in the chat. Nancy asked, is the screening log to be submitted to SOM following practices?
Hold that thought. We'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, but thank you. I think you wait one more slide and that would be the perfect segue. So almost great timing. Anyway, so if there's a failed screening, the athlete or the individual, it doesn't necessarily have to be an athlete. A coach could fail the screening. Any of your volunteers could fail the screening as well. You need to wait 7 days after you've been symptom-free for 7 days before coming back. So effectively 14 days. I don't know why they word it that way, but they're very precise about that. Or you can get written proof from a physician, from a medical professional, that you can come back that you don't have the virus. If you actually have gone through a test and you've tested positive, or the individual, the athlete, whomever, has tested positive for COVID-19, then they will need a medical clearance in writing in order to return to activity. So we talked about, I mentioned before, about the acknowledgement of risk. This is it's a 3-page document. I guess 2 pages can count as the form. The top page goes through and talks about high-risk populations and high-risk situations. We'll touch on that in about 2 slides, and gives a nice overview of things to be aware of and such. There's then a page that goes through expectations and requirements for participation, including such things as the individual stating, I will maintain a 6-foot distance and I will practice, or not make direct contact, so on down the line with there. And then the 3rd page is the one that actually gets filled out and signed, and that needs to then get submitted to headquarters in the same manner that you would typically would submit a medical that you received at practice, if you receive any there, or a volunteer application or something like that. Key with that is talk to your area leadership, and whatever the process is that they typically use, they'll tell you to utilize that. Typically, it's not the coach who's submitting that stuff. It's some process within the area, so they have that. We have said also in previous situations that acknowledgement of risk, we don't expect that to expire except for one exception, and the exception being for anyone who is a minor. When they're a minor, it's their family member or their parent or a guardian who's signing for them. When they become 18 and they become an adult on their 18th birthday, they'll need to redo it again, just as an adult, making sure that they understand the risks as well. Other than that, at this point in time, we don't expect there is no expiration date right now. We don't expect one to be imposed, but again, it can be a varying situation. These are the second page and the third page of the form. Again, I don't expect you to read through that, but it's all in your packet. This is also available as a standalone form. I believe Melissa might have sent that to you, but if you need it, it's available on the coaches resource page. It should be placed at some point on the return to play page, but I didn't see it there. But if you go to the regular coaches resource page, right at the very top of the main coach resource page are links to that, as well as to the logs that we'll talk about in a minute that Nancy was asking about. And all we really need is this last page with the signature. We don't need all the other stuff. They're not writing anything on there, but this is what we would need submitted. And again, work with your area to get that submitted. The front page talks about high-risk individuals. And a key thing to keep in mind with this, we are not telling individuals who are in a high-risk category that they can't participate. We are asking them to consider whether they wish to, knowing the risk, and that's what that acknowledgement of risk form helps with as well. Folks that are in that high-risk category include folks who are over 65 years old, and large part of our population, anyone who lives in a nursing home or long care facility, or including a group home. That's not a nursing home, we realize, but that's still classified in that category. And then other folks who have these other conditions that are listed here. Again, we are not, Special Olympics Maryland is not saying they cannot participate. We are saying you should really give some consideration to that, and that applies to athletes, to partners, so on down the line. Heck, there's some of us on staff who would check off more than one of those boxes. And so we need to make that choice ourselves as well. So it's everybody up and down the entire Special Olympics family that's dealing with that. Now it's the thing from Nancy. So this is the form that you, it's a laid out version of it. That's available in what I think Melissa sent it out. It's also available on the coach resource page to download. This needs to be completed after each, or at the beginning of each practice, at the screening. You can, and please do not make up your own form. Use the form that's provided. You need to do that. You can, however, pre-populate it with the information that's not going to change. So the names of all the people, their role, their contact information. And once you've received their acknowledgement of risk form, you can put a yes there. And then for each practice, have they been screened and were they symptom-free? So again, pre-populating can help. Each of these, again, get to your area leader. We're working out, I think, still the processes on this. We've only had a couple programs start so far. But yeah, they'll need to come into headquarters, and we'll use a process similar to all the submission of forms that we've done before. And thank you for the reminder, Steve. Sorry, Steve doesn't like it when I move the cursor. So, okay, so thanks. Then also, you may have heard this, we have, because of reported difficulties of folks getting medical appointments and all to renew their medicals, with special approval by SOI, we have extended every athlete's medical that either did or would have expired between March 15th of this year and September 29th of this year. They've all had their expiration date changed to September 30th. That's all been updated in GMS, our computer system, and that's set and good to go. It does not apply to any medical that's outside that window, and it also does not apply to any athlete who's new and doesn't have a medical yet. Again, they must have a medical in order to participate. So this doesn't waive that. It's a special one-time only extension of those medicals. It also does not apply to volunteer certifications. Everyone, and the main reason for that is you don't need to get a doctor's appointment to fill out your volunteer form or to do your concussion training and such. Fingers crossed. Let's see. And it looks like we're having some regular difficulties with this. So let me end the show, see if this will. So Melissa, we may have some difficulty with what you wanted to do with the other videos. I don't know that I have access to those, so but I can find this one.
If we do, I can pull them up on mine.
Okay. It's the first time we've had this problem.
Preparing the venue to safely welcome Special Olympics participants is vital for return to activity for phases 1 and 2. Arrive early to prepare the space. Start by ensuring the venue is disinfected or sanitized, especially the bathrooms and other high-touch areas. Wear disposable gloves for all tasks in the cleaning process, including the handling of trash. After sanitizing the space, set up signage that reinforces proper hygiene procedures, physical distancing, and wearing personal protective equipment, or PPE. Post signs in easy-to-understand language with visual cues in highly visible locations, like entrances and restrooms. The signs should describe how to stop the spread of germs by properly washing hands, following physical distancing guidelines, and explaining how to properly wear a cloth face covering. Also, make sure hand sanitizer and/or hand washing facilities or stations are available. Lastly, set up a single entry with screening and a single exit area, which means there should be one entrance into the venue and one exit out of the venue that allows participants to be at least 2 meters or 6 feet apart. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity Protocol and Safety Guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Okay. So, again, this is a lot of this stuff overlaps, but each program should have on site masks, all the items that you see there. Every participant, athlete, partner, coach, etc., should be bringing their own mask. We say have some additional masks available so that if there is a problem, first, somebody forgets theirs, but secondly, something happens to it, it gets soiled or whatever, you have a spare there for that. We've given, through the area director, to each program 2 thermometers, 2 of the no-touch thermometers, and a box of gloves. We have other materials and all that are available that areas can procure through us or can procure on their own as well. We think we have, according to Rhonda Garrison, who's handles our risk management, we have a pretty good supply of all that stuff, should be in good situation. In terms of masks and face coverings and such, when do they need to have them on? For athletes and unified teammates, basically your program participants, your competitors, if you will, that type of thing, they need to have their masks on when they're arriving through that entire process up to the point where they actually start physical activity. So they should be wearing them up until the point where they're doing their warm up and their stretches prior to actually starting their activity. At that point, they can take them off and leave them off until they stop the physical activity. And again, that's athletes and partners both. When they take them off, please do not just go and collect all of them and put them in a pack or whatever. You've then cross-contaminated all of them between the folks. They should, again, the athlete should be bringing, or your participants should all be bringing, their own water bottles and all that other stuff, and they can put them in their bag that's there. And again, same thing for the teammates. For coaches and sport volunteers, the volunteers who are actually working with the sports part, they should have them on at all times, except when they themselves are participating in that physical activity. So if they're running some of the drills, well, whatever drills you have set up with that the athletes are doing, they can remove the mask at that time as well. Otherwise, they should have them on. Non-sport volunteers, which would be certainly the folks that are running your screening area, but there may be some others that are doing things that are supporting the program. They should have their masks on at all times throughout. And again, there's more detail in your packet that you received. And of course, this one's not going to work either. Should be so lucky. So, wow. Last one of this run, and it's what we're dealing with. So just a second. I apologize for the slight delay. That one is not travel to coaching adjustments. There we go.
As a coach, you have a critical role in ensuring the safety of your participants. It is necessary to adapt some of your coaching strategies to lead safe practices under Special Olympics' new Return to Activity guidelines. Before each activity, communicate the need for high-risk individuals to participate at home, and have all participants complete the COVID-19 Participant Code of Conduct and Risk Assessment forms. Forms may be tracked in GMS if the program would like. During practice, it is important to maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet or 2 meters between all participants. To do this, place markers on the ground to indicate what 6 feet is, and have extra volunteers to remind participants to maintain their distance. We know it is difficult, but to ensure the safety of everyone participating, there are no fist bumps, high fives, hugs, or huddles right now during this COVID-19 pandemic. You can still support your friends and teammates by cheering each other on. All participants should come to the activity with their own supplies and cannot share masks, water bottles, towels, or uniforms. In Phase 2, the use of shared equipment is allowed, but should be limited. All equipment will be disinfected between each use. Wear face masks throughout activities, including arrivals and departures. Do not touch the outside of the mask. Do not scratch or touch your face. Masks do not need to be worn during active exercise. However, if sneezing, coughing, or yawning without a face mask on, participants should cover their faces with a tissue or elbow, not their hands, and throw away any tissues and wash their hands immediately. Throughout the activity, use verbal and visual signs to remind participants about hygiene, standard infection prevention, physical distancing, and use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity protocol and safety guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Great. Okay. So, just in summary of some additional resources that are available. You mentioned about the interactive webinars that, again, were on that earlier slide. The links for them are also available on that Return to Play site that Special Olympics Maryland has set up. For coaches, SOI is Special Olympics International, is working with national governing bodies on sport-specific sources or resources. Some of those are available. We haven't seen a whole lot as yet, but anything that we have, we certainly will pass on and post also on the coach resource page, and potentially, depending upon how many folks it would be valuable to on that Return to Play site. And then there's some volunteer training that has been done and we can continue to do and offer in terms of support of folks. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time as we talk through some of the different protocols and things that need to be adhered to. Want to see how this might apply to your training programs. What are something specifically for flag football? And don't want to just sit here and identify all the different problems. And there certainly are some challenges that we need to be addressed, but also what are some of the solutions? I think in many cases there are some solutions. In some cases it may mean that you can't do certain things. Let's just to start the discussion, and you can either use the chat or raise your hand and Steve will open up your line. But when we think about the requirement of social distancing, that everybody in your program needs to be at least 6 feet apart, and that's phase 1 and phase 2. what might that mean? What kind of challenges might that add, or complications, or things that you might need to do differently in your program when we're thinking of flag football? Everything the same? Nothing changes? Okay, well, a couple things that we came up with that might be the case. So again,
There are some comments here, Mike, that just came.
Oh, okay. Oh, they just started coming in. Great, thank you. So yeah, go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry. You go ahead. Let me take a drink of water.
So Don Bewick said that we'll be limited to drills and skills that are going to be discussed later. And again, a little foreshadowing to what's coming up here in a minute. Cindy said that you can't play it. You can't pull the flags, etc. as a team sport, and having that interaction and that close proximity with each other. Exactly. Nancy Schmidt said in the past we would not have had to limit the number of athletes, and they may need to do that now. Absolutely. So as far as number of athletes that come to practice, how you split them up into different groups to keep that social distancing, etc. So good things there, guys. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, right. And I think that Nancy hits it on the, and again, work with your area leadership on this. Most of the areas that are looking or considering opening up are looking at, do we need to put a cap, at least initially, on that. But yeah, definitely an actual flag football game as a team game, same thing with soccer, until we're in phase 3, where all the restrictions are lifted, that's just not realistic. But some other thoughts that come in there, can't practice handoffs. That third bullet, that definitely, when Jeff, most of you who know Jeff saw him in there with his wonderful Maryland neck gaiter. Athletes are so used to coming in and shaking hands and doing high fives and fist bumps and so on down the line. One of the athletes, when they were shooting that video, went in and actually got really upset when Jeff had to tell him, I'm sorry, we can't do that. No, we're not in these conditions, not until things get a whole lot better, and had a real negative emotional reaction there, and just need to be prepared for that. It may mean that you may have some athletes who typically participate in your program who, if they can't do that, if they can't handle the social distancing with some coaching, I mean, nobody's going to walk in and be used to it right away. But if they can't handle that, they can't handle the no direct contact and such, they may not be able to participate right now. And that's a tough situation. I understand that. But again, this is a requirement. It's this or we don't open up the sport at all. So so with that, let's, again, looking at some, just taking it from another, same basic question, but so when we're thinking about no indirect or direct contact in phase 1, does that trigger any other things that maybe we need to think about in terms of how we train a skill that we're doing or operate and such? So, and again, these are all just kind of triggers to get you all thinking about things so that you've thought through them ahead of time. And maybe while we're here with a number of very experienced coaches, we can come up with some solutions or some options that might be there. So Steve, do you have anything?
Steve had to step away for a second, but I'll jump in.
Okay.
Don said in phase 2, we'll be able to do more passing drills, etc. That is prohibited in phase 1, since there's no indirect contact in phase 1.
Right.
And Andrew said that we can't practice passing and catching.
Right.
In phase 1.
In phase 1, that would be in phase 1, right? Yeah, good points. And again, this is a non-exhaustive list. The key thing is really thinking through this. So in terms of how you're doing your instruction and all, and it may not be as much the case in flag football as in some other sports, in terms of the need to touch to get athletes in a safe form, if you will, to do a skill and so on. But it's something to keep in mind as you're doing your instruction. One thought that came up, and actually that's a carryover from tennis, where about having, if you have the luxury of a sufficient number of footballs, In tennis, it's recommended when you're playing a match that you actually number 3 of the balls for the player on one side of the net and 3 of the balls for the others. And they only pick up their own balls. They can still serve, they can do the so on back and forth, but then they only pick up their own tennis balls there. Perhaps, and I realize this may not be realistic for some programs, but if you have enough footballs, label that this is Larry's and this is Caleb's and this is Jane's or whoever the case may be. I'm not suggesting that every program is able to do that, but that might be an option. Again, other skills other than catching. In fact, when we look at the skills that the sports management team put together, I think the only major skill for flag football that is not included is catching. There's throws and other things that are in there, and I'm sure it was for that reason. But any other thought?
Don mentioned that they can't practice plays either.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you probably couldn't, unless you have very wide open plays, I guess. That spreads the team. So, but yeah, it's a really good point. And then this last one is just another thought-provoking. How would you do that? So actually, a question is: so how would you practice flag pulling? Let's assume we're in phase 1. So we have both the physical distancing and the indirect contact in play. But how could you practice flag pulling?
You can unmute yourself as well if you don't want to just type. Or raise your hand and we can unmute you.
Well, I mean, there is one suggestion, actually, one of the skills is built on it. And it's not ideal. It's not exactly like someone who's evading you while you're trying to pull the flag, but.
Nancy mentioned, sorry, I lost it. Putting flags on something stationary, which doesn't mimic it, but it helps.
Right.
Don said passing is limited to stationary targets, not really realistic. Flag pulling using the dummy, talked about later.
Yeah, it's possible. Unless you want to invest in a bunch of robots to be moving on the field with the flags, but I think we can spend our money a little better some other ways. So again, we're not going to get through everything here. And Melissa later will toss a suggestion and see if you're interested in terms of some regular base touching and sharing of ideas as we encounter a number of different challenges here. So before we shift over to Melissa covering stuff more specifically on flag football, any questions, anything along those lines? And Nancy, I did see your question. We'll have some stuff coming out over the weekend on that, and then we have another session for GMS folks that we've set up too. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to mute. And Melissa, I think I can launch those 2 videos directly from the emails that you sent. So
Okay.
We'll give that a shot.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. I know this is the part that you guys are really excited about. So I worked with my sports management team and we came up with a great number of new skill stations that we think will be really good. Actually met with Megan Schaefer and 4 of her players on Tuesday to record them going through the stations, which turned out to be a really great thing. And the athletes and the one partner was there all loved it. So those videos will be posted later at a later date once they're all put together and everything. But tonight, my big thing is going over these new stations for you guys. And we'll try not to spend too much time on it. But please feel free to ask any questions that you have on these stations because they are all brand new. First, a quick reminder, just like in any Special Olympics sport, no athlete or volunteer can participate in any manner at all in a Special Olympics Maryland program without a valid and current medical form or volunteer applications. even though we're not having games this year, that does not mean that this rule does not apply. They're on the field with you, they must have a valid medical or volunteer application. So just to go over, typically we have about 4 dates that you guys have to remember. This one is just October 1st. Make sure all the stuff is in by then. All your medical forms and volunteer applications must be valid through October 31st. That is the technical end of the season. Everything must be valid through that date, and we have to have all of that in by 10/1. But it should be in before they actually start participating. You guys have all seen a variation of this table. The biggest thing is that you see every single person that's involved with the team needs to have the acknowledgement of risk form. On Tuesday, I even filled one out and it's sent in. So every single person that's there, volunteer, coach, partner, athletes, all have to have this acknowledgement of risk form before they can participate. So we're doing the team assessments a little differently this year. This is just so I get an idea of who's participating, how many you have participating, and it's really just a roster. Don't worry about anything else. Just give me the coach's contact information, and then fill in the below. It's just name, age, gender, and if they're an athlete or partner. That's all I need just to have so we can keep track for the census and know ahead of time who all is participating. So it's quick and easy, and I'll send this out with the follow-up email. All right, so what you guys really want to know. These are the 6 new stations that we came up with. We have the 40-yard dash, the target pass, or throwing for accuracy, same difference, pass for distance, flag pulling, a fun footwork one, which you'll see some videos on because my diagram is very confusing looking. So I wanted to make sure you guys got videos to see where my mind was going with that. I worked on these diagrams very hard, I will say. And then just a fun little one that we add in. We know we don't do punting in our games, but at the NERSA tournament, which you guys have all heard about at College Park at the end of the season in November, they do a punt pass throw, something, competition. All the athletes really love the punting. So we wanted to put that in just for something extra fun. Nothing, we're not adding punting into our games. It's just a fun, and you get to watch your athletes try to punt the ball, which is even better. So throughout the stations, there's 2 stations, the target pass and the flag pulling. You'll notice, like we talk about the targets, this is the inflatable target that we're talking about. This is the one I bought. There are so many different variations of these. The only thing that I ask is that none of them are taller than this. So 63 inches is the max height that you can get if you guys buy them. If you need help, I can send you guys the link to where I bought them on Amazon. If you have Prime, they come in 2 days. I ordered more of them on, I think, Tuesday, and they're already ready for me to pick up. So with Prime, they come pretty quickly. That's not a big deal. Look before you order them because there are a lot of variations from different companies, and some don't ship out until September or like the end of September. So just kind of keep an eye out on these. The ones I bought here are $25 each, give or take. Pretty much you just put water in it, and it's the punching bags that pop right back up. So you hit it, it pops back up. Mostly for the flag pulling. So if an athlete trips and runs into it, they hit that, it's not gonna hurt them because it's air and water. So when we go through the stations and you see target, this is the target that they're talking about.
And Melissa, you want to mention about the, what we're doing highlights here, but you have another resource that you'll send to folks.
Yeah, so I'm almost finished. This other, today is the slides, does not go into all the details of the event, how to run it and stuff like that. It's just an overview. I will have a skills packet put together that will get sent out hopefully tomorrow. I'm having a couple other people look at it real fast just to make sure, you know, all the spelling errors and it sounds correct and stuff like that. So tonight, please still ask your questions, but just know it's more in depth than what I'm going over tonight. All right, so 40-yard dash, very simple. They start at the start line, they run as fast as they can, 40 yards. It's timed. They get 2 attempts, and only the fastest time is scored. Excuse me. There's the score conversion chart. So if they run it in a certain amount of seconds, that's how many points they get for it. So say someone runs it in 5.5 seconds, then they run it again, and it's 6.1 seconds. So the 5.5 is obviously faster, so they would get the 18 points, not the 16. So you only have to record their fastest time. And we put the 4.9 because we know Rata from St. Mary's is just going to kill that anyway, so he'll be in his own category because of how fast he is. Easy little diagram, start, finish, 40 yards, nothing too crazy. Just make sure the easiest way to do it is have 2 cones at the start line. They had to run through the other 2 cones at the other end. So target pass. There will be you'll create a throwing box, which is just 4 cones set up 2 yards apart. My lovely diagram.
I'll back up to the other one after.
Okay.
It's probably easier to see this as you're talking about it.
Yeah. So the gray little ovals are those cool little inflatables. Each route, we changed it to, we have 3 routes. Each athlete will get 3 balls, 1 ball per target. So they get up, they'll have 3 balls. They have 1 chance to hit each target. Each target is worth a different amount of points. The out route is worth 2 points. The corner route is worth 5 points, and the post route is worth 7 points. So they'll go through once. They have to go get their own balls. Since there's no indirect contact, they have to go get their own balls, bring them back, and they have to be sanitized before the next athlete uses them. So you can see the distance from the center and how to mark them how to put them on the field. From the center box, the line of scrimmage, you'll go for the out route, go out 5 yards, and then over 5 yards. Same corner route, you'll go out 5 yards, or I'm sorry, out 15 yards, straight out 15 yards, out to the left 5 yards. Just so you know where on the field to place them. The post route just goes straight down the center, 20 yards out, and that'll be there. The athlete will get 2 rounds, what we suggest, so that they can give themselves a break, get some water, throw 3 balls, 1 for each target, come back, get the end of the line, have everyone go through, and then they can throw their second round. Pretty simple. As long as it hits the target in the air, it counts for points. If I throw it and it bounces before it hits it, does not count. Also, if they step on or out of the box, they do not get points for that particular throw. Okay, so if I happen to step on the line or out of the box when I'm throwing at the post route, I don't get points if I hit it. But if I hit the other 2 and I'm in the box, I still get those points. So I would just get 0 for the one that I stepped out for. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yeah, Melissa, we did have a quick question from Don Bewick. He was talking about in the 40, if someone runs a 5.42 seconds, does that or the 6.54 seconds. Do we round it up to the 6.5 or keep it at 6.4? I think, Mike, typically you round up to the next highest in some events. But
Yeah,
Melissa, I don't know if you guys had any further discussions on that, or Mike.
yeah, the standard in track is you always round up so that they're not getting so to the slower rounding, if you will. So that if it's 6.32, it goes up to 6.4. So even if it's one increment out, so you're not giving them the benefit of that. But this isn't track. I mean, track is the best sport, I understand, but this is like football. So.
We will use the track guide on that. So if it is 6.42, round it up to 6.5 just to make it easier.
Yep.
Okay, pass for distance, pretty much is what it says. They start in their throwing box and they throw it as far as they can down the field. They'll get 3 balls to throw as far as they can. We have the extra cones on the side set up to help with your measurements. That's all. It's just to help measure it, but you're gonna, where the ball lands, not comes to rest, but where it lands, you'll put some kind of marker or cone or flag or something in the ground there. You only measure the farthest ball thrown. So they get 3 throws to throw as far as they can. You only have to measure the farthest throw. If there's 2 very close to each other, obviously go ahead and measure those as well. Scoring, 1 point per yard. So if they throw it 42 yards, they get 42 points for that, that station. To measure, it's to make it easy. So if I'm throwing it and it goes off to the side, instead of having you guys create vectors like we do for some of our events, it's the easiest. Start where the ball lands, walk to the center point, and that's where it gets measured from. Does that make sense? Just to make it a lot easier, you always measure from the front of the box, the throwing box, to that center point. So they only get the 3 balls for this one. So flag pulling is set up exactly the way that target pass is. And if you can tell, Mike couldn't tell what they were, but those little yellow things are the flags. Told you I had fun with these diagrams. I made little flags for them. So you put them on the big blow up targets, and the athlete starts in the throwing box. They run out to the first target, pull the flag, run back to this box, drop the flag off, run to the next one, come back, drop off the flag, run to the final one, come back, drop off the flag. They can go in whatever order they want. It doesn't have to be the shortest, middle, then longest. If they want to go to the farthest one first, that's fine. When we did the demo on Tuesday, we had some athletes going the farthest way first. We had some athletes going in the middle. We had some athletes going to the closest one. It's whatever they feel like. It's fine. As long as they get all 3 flags going there and back, that's fine. Biggest thing with this one, especially in phase 1, with the no indirect contact, is you have to, when in between, you have to sanitize the flags, and you have to sanitize, wipe down the targets as well, because they're going to be touching the targets when they pull the flag. So make sure they are sanitized before the next person goes. Easiest way to do it, when you take the flags out, start to take them out after those are sanitized. As you're about to put the flags on, before you put on, sanitize the inflatable, put the flags on, go to the next one, same thing. The clock starts when coach says go. It ends when the 3rd flag is dropped in the box. The player will have 2 attempts. Fastest time is what's scored. So the footwork station. Football, you need good footwork. This is my crazy diagram. It is very confusing. I understand that. We have 2 videos of 2 of our athletes from Frederick doing it. So you start at the start line, sprint 10 yards forward, and then we're calling it up and backs. They're always facing the same direction in all 4 of these corners, sides. They're always facing straight ahead from the start line. So they're gonna go forward, go around the cone, backpedal around the next cone, forward around, and kind of zigzag through sideways and kind of just going up and back through. Once they get to the last one, they're going to backpedal back to the next cone, defensive side shuffle to the finish line. Once they make it around that once, time's up. Their time stops. So this makes it look very confusing. I understand. So that's why I want to show you these videos first. So this is Richie. He is, if you guys know Megan's team, Richie's one of the athletes on the blue team, which is one of the lower level teams.
Big cone. Big cone.
So you can see him doing it. He's going to be on the, he's a little bit slower than the other guys. I think that's so he actually does it really well. It sprints up, goes in and out of the cones. He's always facing the one direction. This is 2 cones. So they miss a cone, they get 1 penalty second added to their time. Back pedals, gets to that cone, defensive slides, all the way to the finish line. So that's just how it's done. I know my diagram looks very confusing. That's why we want to share these videos. For those of you guys know him, this is Dallas. He does this a little bit quicker, so we wanted to show Richie first.
Once again, those of you who were on just a minute ago, you heard Mike welcome everyone. And again, this is the official welcome to the 2020 golf preseason coaches webinar. We'll go through a lot of things this evening. And what I will say is I'm pleased to have Ryan.
Steve wanted to welcome us to the golf. Apparently he doesn't like my flag football stuff.
Steve is everywhere. I don't know.
That's my technology snafu that I threw in here. But Melissa, we did have a couple questions come in while you were talking about the diagram.
Yep.
One was from Joe asking, and I know you're going to talk about this a little bit later, but will we be competing against other counties and that kind of stuff? And if so, will each player on team compete at each drill, or how would we decide that? Again, some of these things are still being talked through, Joe, but again, I'll let Melissa, if you have anything you want to add there, and then I've got another question for you.
Yeah, so what we thought, because, I mean, everyone that does team sports is a very competitive person. Most people that do sports, period, are competitive people in nature. So you'll see a score sheet in the next couple, after we go through all the slides. What we thought would be fun, having what the athletes are competing in all of the drills, all the stations, and then we can post the results on the coach's resource page. Then they can go on there and see the results from everyone else, even if they're not together. They'd be like, oh, Sarah got this fast. She did this. I got to beat her. So next time when she goes again, she can try to beat that time. So it's not just competing against your own teammates, because these are individual skills. So it's not really a team anymore for this year, unfortunately, but you can compete against the other counties still. And that way we can post it online. I'll keep that up to date the whole time.
And we can all, and I'm sorry, I got distracted handling something else, so I apologize if I'm repeating, but we definitely want to look at opportunities to have some live in-person competitions. Need to conform to all of the protocols that are in place. So there may be limitations on that. And we at headquarters, Melissa and the rest of us would certainly work with the counties to co-host these events and make them as meaningful and exciting as possible. But again, we need to, it probably would not occur, there's no probably, it would not occur until we're in at least phase 2. Right. Just because of the sheer numbers and the whole indirect contact component there. But if we can do it and folks are willing to co-host with us where we can pick up a good chunk of the work for it, we certainly want to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And also, again, I know Melissa was saying athletes, and you guys all know this, for athletes and partners, just to get out, get the activity and get engaged. Nancy Schmidt also shared that they have a footwork ladder drill and diagrams and stuff like that. So again, Nancy and other coaches, if you have some great ideas that may not fit in these skill stations, maybe we add them, or maybe it's just a good camaraderie sharing of, hey, Coach X and Coach Y, this is what we're doing. You know, what are you guys doing? This is a chance for each of you guys and for us to come up with new ideas, innovative solutions, and work together for the betterment of the athletes and partners. So really encourage the interaction amongst yourselves and with our office at the state level through Melissa as well. So thank you guys for those comments.
Yeah, and actually one of the legs of the course for the footwork was going to be an agility ladder, but then we decided against it because, well, Megan and I tried it, didn't work out very well at all. So we changed it to the up and backs. Also, we figured not every county would have access to an agility ladder, but they all had some kind of cones. For football, you have to have your cones or pylons, whatever you want to use. But so we know everyone has those. So we thought that would be a little bit easier than the agility ladder because not everyone might have access to one. But yeah, so that was our first thought, was the agility ladder. And again, those videos we'll put together a nice full video of Megan Schaefer explaining all the drills for you guys. I know you're so excited about that one. Megan did a great job. Again, we had one of her partners and 3 athletes out there demonstrating. So we'll put together that video, working with Adam Hayes from the office. So that will be, hopefully in the next week or 2, we'll have that done. But once that's done, I'll send you guys the link and I'll put it on the coaches resource page for you guys. And the last one.
Actually, Melissa, before you, Don, I think is asking for a clarification. Don, can you I'm not sure exactly what you're asking though.
Yeah, I think I've got it there. It's
Okay.
For the cones and the up and backs, or the zigzag, what you were calling it. The number of cones that are on the diagram, knowing it's only 10 yards, and I think they were going to be 2 yards in between.
Yeah, put them every 2 yards. So you're at here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Well, I guess I have one too many cones on the diagram, so don't listen to Steve.
So yeah, so Don, yeah, they're 2 yards apart. So we'll have Melissa update the diagram because I know how much she loves this diagram, and we'll have it sent back out to you guys.
No, that's all I wanted was clarification. That's all. That's why I figured you'd have them 2 yards apart, but I just wanted to clarify.
Gotcha. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, this one diagram took me about half the day yesterday trying to figure it all out and redoing it a bunch of times because Steve couldn't understand it. But I knew if he understood it, then we're good. So the last one is the punt for distance, which again, just a fun one to do, not a big, don't have your athletes stress about it. And just know that we are not adding this to our game, but just for fun, having the punt for distance. It's literally set up the same exact way as the throw for distance. They have to stay within the punting square, kicking square, whatever you want to call it. Drop it, punt it through as far as they can get it. That's it. Again, they get 3 balls. They measure the farthest one. That's what they get points for. If they step out of the box, they get 0 for that punt. So pretty simple, 1 yard per punt again. These are probably going to be going kind of everywhere, especially at first since they've never done it before. So that's why, again, to measure from the point, walk straight to the center line, and that's where you'll measure from. And that is supposed to say the punt line, not the throw line. So that's my fault.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one too.
Oh, that's okay.
Yep.
So I created this score sheet, and if you guys think it looks familiar, it's because I took it straight from our team assessment form, which makes it very easy for you guys all to recognize. Each one, it will add up this final score for you. So you put in their points for the 40-yard dash. Don't put in their time. Put in the points for 40-yard dash, the target pass, punt for distance. Make sure all of them are their points, not times, because the times are going to mess it all up. And it'll add up the total score for all of them. So after you go through them, send this to me each time, and I can update it on the website for everyone. So that way we keep a very up-to-date form. I can even do it, each tab is a different week. However we want to do it. That way the athletes can kind of see their progress throughout the weeks. And if, say, Harford County is doing it earlier, that way they can see the scores. The athletes starting later can see the scores of theirs the first week versus their first week and stuff like that. So we can do that. That's an easy thing. But after your team does all 6 stations, send me this score sheet. You'll probably be sending me a lot of these. That's fine. Best thing to do is please make it computerized.
Yeah, hey, Melissa, one thing that could be helpful, and I can work with you on this, is maybe after the first or second week, we can show their improvement from baseline.
Yeah.
So that, because there's going to be, the scores are going to be all over the map based on the abilities of the athletes. But, if I'm a player and I know, okay, I'm making a number up here. I don't know if it would even work. If I got 50 after my first practice, but then I'm shooting up in the 60s or the 70s, that's a nice improvement, regardless of where I fit with everybody else. I can see that I've improved, and I think we can do that. And
so
actually build that right into the spreadsheet.
Yep, after the first week, I can add extra columns in that shows their improvement. I can definitely do that. That's easy. Fix.
Yeah, if not on the individual sheets, at least when we do the summary, we can certainly do that.
Yes, I'd probably do it on the summary, not as much the individual sheets.
Yeah.
So when I send out the score sheet, on the other tab is going to show this, which is just a scoring overview for each station. So you can print them out front and back, if that makes it easy for you, or have them separate, so you can see the conversions of the times and how to score each score sheet. I try to put it all on one score sheet like our other individual skills, but there's too many and I couldn't fit it all and make it legible. And one thing we did discuss was a lot of our teams are unified. We don't want to get rid of our unified partners. So we can have another division of the unified partners so they can still participate in this as well. This isn't just going to be for the athletes. We'll let the partners participate as well also.
Mix them all together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know a bunch of our athletes that will be great matches for some of our top partners, and I think our partners will fit in very nicely with a lot of our athletes. So yeah, I mean, we don't have to keep them separate. We can, or we can put them together, whatever you guys think.
Okay.
So this last section we're not going through. You guys have all seen these before. It's just pictures of the forms that you guys need, like the athlete medicals, volunteer applications that you've all seen before in the past. Goes over the coaching requirements, the coaching certifications, code of conduct, all that. Please go through that yourself. I've sent the slides out to you. We did a couple little tweaks, nothing major, but I'll send them out in the follow-up as well. So make sure you go through those.
Okay. One thing, the thing I got distracted with, but real world situation. I won't mention the county, but we have several counties who started their golf programs and a bocce program this evening. Jeff Abel, again, you all know him, texted me that they had to send a coach home because of a high temperature. So again, it applies to everyone. Luckily, they had additional coaches for coverage there, but keep that in mind. Be looking at that. We don't know that the coach has COVID-19. just has a high temperature. So, again, as this is happening, just a real world example of that. So just want to make sure, I thought it would be helpful to share that.
So one more thing, I said we can add partners in. If coaches want to participate, we can have our own coaches category too. I think that could be really fun. I think I might know who might win them all, but that's okay. I'm not going to say that out loud. But we have some very competitive coaches, so I think that could be a fun little add-on too, if we have like a competitive coaches going up and down. I knew Joe would like that one. So just a little food for thought for that. So we'll open it up to any questions you guys have. I know I went through those really quickly, and not in great detail either.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Nancy. And again, just right now we have it open for questions. If other things pop up, as we were talking about, as you start to get back after you get approval with your management and area director to start things up, to find some more things, or you have some challenges or whatever, just communicate back to Melissa and through your area director or whatever, but you go directly to her with sports specific information. And again, we'll share those resources and ideas with the rest of the crew.
Thanks, Joe. You be safe as well.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Any other thoughts, questions, suggestions?
Not seeing anything coming in through here yet, Mike.
Okay. Well, we're right there at 8:32. So.
Yeah.
Not seeing any. I'll be the first and let Melissa finish it up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope this was helpful. This is a learning process. I think the flag football sports management team has done a fantastic job of putting together these skills and having something that is truly meaningful and competitive, I think, for our athletes and partners who would otherwise be playing on a team. To Melissa's great credit, the soccer sports management team is doing a similar thing as well, because they wouldn't be able to play games until phase 3 either. So, and the sport management teams are you coaches. So it looks, I'm excited to see some of these things in action. Excited to see someone try to take Melissa's diagram and lay out the course too, but that's a different story. So.
It was fun watching Megan try to do it. I let her try first before I did it.
Thanks.
But yeah, so thank you guys all again so much for being here tonight. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You guys all have my phone number. You all have my email. Please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to me about any questions you have about the skills. And if you want me to come to the first practice to help you with those, I have no problem doing that. Just let me know, as long as it doesn't mess up your numbers. If you already have 10 people there, I'm not going to come to mess that up. I don't want to take a spot from an athlete. But I have no problem coming out to help. I'd actually like to come out to practices to see it done, since this is the first time we're doing it. But let me know if you want me to come out and help set up the stations as well. I can set them up, meet you early, help set them up before the athletes get there, so it doesn't mess up your numbers, if that helps too. Just let me know. And I get to see you guys in person. I haven't seen you in since some of you guys since March, some of you longer.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Thank you guys again, and hope you have a great night.
Okay. Thanks. See you all soon.